Greg, Will Drake is going to remodel the Hotel Cortez. What in the hell could possibly go wrong?
I mean, he's got to do what he's got to do. He's got to get his Altier set up. What would you do in this scenario? You got to set it up no matter what. Vampires, zombies, I don't care.
Hey guys, we're back breaking down episode 7 of American Horror Story Hotel. This is called Flicker. And like we mentioned, yes, they are doing some construction at Hotel Cortez. They are breaking down walls, and a lot of secrets will be revealed behind those walls. Greg, it doesn't smell too good either.
No, they smell death, which is always a great sign in American Horror Story. When you smell that, it's only good things can happen from there.
You immediately knew that those guys were dead as soon as they literally smelt death.
Oh, cannon fodder. Red shirts, they're first to go. Now, in passing, Drake talks to his son about how life's going to be now that he's going to marry the Countess, apparently, or he's going to be with her for a very long time. And then his son, of course, says, wait, I thought you liked guys, for one. Mm-hmm. And he tells him it's complicated. Well, with that said, now the line, don't sleep on it, where his son tells him, like, I made some friends here. It's all good. Don't worry about it. That will come back around.
Totally, yeah. And he made some friends with the vampire children. Mm-hmm. Not the best group to hang out with, I don't think, for a young child, but hey, he made friends.
All good. Now let's check in on John Lowe. He's getting his psychiatric treatment, or his evaluation. And from here, it looks like he's going to be checked into a treatment center. Now, is he doing this voluntarily, or as we find out later in the episode, no, he's there for a certain reason or certain killer he's going after. He's still on the hunt for the killer. He's still on the hunt for the 10 Commandments killer at this point, no matter what, as we see him even going back to crime scenes again, where he gets in a fight with his friend. At this point, they're done with him.
Yeah, I think it's enough pressure from his family, from the people he used to work with, that now it's like, okay, now we gotta, you have to seek help, you have to get professional help, you have to go somewhere. What was so conniving and kind of menacing about the sequence when we're first introduced to this is, if you watch Alex Lowe, like her facial expression the whole time, kind of like a half smirk as they're like, sitting and waiting at the treatment center. Mm-hmm. She's basically like, orchestrating this whole thing for him to kind of get help, basically so she can be with Holden, her, for eternity, and get him out of the way. So, I mean, Alex Lowe quickly became like super evil.
It's a long con for her son. It can't end well for her, but here she is. She's trying to put it all together, but her house of cards is going to come down at some point. She can't keep him behind either bars or in treatment for so long, and it looks like by the end of this episode, she's in trouble.
And it seems that John Lowe is kind of at peace with being at this center and getting help. He constantly says that like this is the right place for him, that he's perfectly fine with this. And then the camera kind of zooms in, and then you see like this half smile that he puts on, and it just kind of gives you really creepy vibes.
I don't like it. Don't like it.
Yeah.
Nope. This is the first time he's given any expression like this, and probably since episode 1, if ever, any kind of smile. It's like Kawhi Leonard. This is the first time you ever seen him smile on camera. I don't know. It's weird. Don't do it anymore. Now, back at the hotel, the Countess and Iris are assessing the damage, and when I say damage, I mean the carnage that's transpired with the 2 construction workers who were killed off by these, like, vampire, zombie-esque, old people. So they've been there for some time. We'll learn why later on in the episode, but it seems the Countess, she kind of has a feeling of what's going on here, but she thinks it's the kids. At this point, from the crime scene, or at least the scene in the hotel, it looks like it's possibly the children that got out and may have done this, but they don't know, and so they have to hide it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, even Iris comments that it looks like the Countess is scared or like kind of concerned, and it was a kind of an emotion that she hasn't ever seen from the Countess. So clearly the Countess, who we thought had like eyes on the entire property and knew everything that was going on, and you couldn't really hide anything from her, clearly this section of the hotel is a complete secret to even her, and she's kind of in the dark about what was going on here. So as we learn later, like you said, James March has a few tricks up his sleeve.
Now we head over to Marcy in the hotel. R.I.P. Marcy. Sorry, your time is done now in American Horror Story. Apparently, she's gone from selling real estate from the murder house to Hotel Cortez, which was finally her downfall, as she is eaten by the vampires, or consumed, I guess, for her life source, her life force, I guess. Also, Life Force shout out. If you haven't seen that movie, please go watch it right now. And from here, it's time for a flashback as we learn the backstory of these two vampires as well as the Countess as we go back to the 1920s.
Yeah, we quickly learn the identity of these two vampires that are slowly getting their life back. As you said, they haven't feasted on blood in quite some time, and it is Rudolph Valentino and Natasha Rambova. And these two were married, and Valentino actually a real-life silent film star in the 1920s, and we get some kind of fun, flashbacks to Hollywood during this time period. Specifically, we get a flashback to 1925 and the on-set filming of The Son of the Sheik.
An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. That is the law of my father.
Now, this scene specifically is actually from the movie. It's a very controversial rape scene that we see kind of one of the takes from it right here. And the interesting thing here is obviously we get the audio as they're filming it, but this was actually a silent film. And if you watch the actual movie, you will just see, it's a silent film, so you'll just see the title cards of the conversation going back and forth. But an interesting tie-in to a real life, American Horror Story loves to do this, Greg, a real life figure, and then kind of put a twist on what really happened, add some fiction, have some fun with it.
Oh my God. He is so beautiful.
My boyfriend says he's queer.
Gibby, he's married.
Now, with Valentino, one cool thing is that it's played by Finn Wittrock. That character, as we saw the last episode, Tristan Duffy was killed off. So Finn Wittrock's like, all right, who do you want me to play now? And so now it's Valentino. This is a reoccurring theme in pretty much all of AHS. We've seen it with Sarah Paulson. We saw it with Joan Collins in AHS Apocalypse. And even, who's the guy? Oh, God.
Danny Houston.
Danny Houston, thank you, from Freak Show. He does it as well. Now, with Valentino, he's a ladies' man, or at least he's a ladies' man on set, or perceived that way from a few of the actresses, including the Countess, Elizabeth at the time, and she gets slipped a note.
So Elizabeth is invited over to Valentino's place, and they have a nice little dinner, and soon they have an affair, but Valentino's wife, Natacha, is also into it. They're open to it. They are, quote-unquote, gods, and they have appetites. And we get a conversation here between Elizabeth and Valentino, a pretty fitting conversation about what she sees, and she kind of comes into this as a small-time actress, really wide-eyed about Hollywood and what could happen, the careers she could possibly have, and she kind of idolizes Valentino. Obviously, he's a movie star, he's a sex symbol, and she has this conversation with him about being immortalized on the screen for forever, right? And it's ironic, obviously, because they eventually become vampires, immortalized for eternity as the, living dead, literally. And they also talk about, this is where we get the title of this episode, Flicker. They basically, flickers used to be kind of a name for films back in the day. The projectionist would have the lamp from the light from the lamp kind of flickering against their face as they're projecting the film. And that's where we get the term flick. So if you ever say, oh, that's one of my favorite flicks, it actually came from this origin. I had no idea, Greg. I learned something.
There you go. So now we flash forward to the following summer, where it looks like they're, as celebrities do, you go to premieres or openings of hotels. Apparently, the grand opening of the Hotel Cortez, as Marsh is cheersing the room, and this is where we find out, sadly, with the Countess there, that Valentino has apparently died.
He's dead! Valentino's dead. He died in New York this morning.
His movie just came out. Bet the box office goes through the roof.
Now, I was trying to think, obviously, we don't know what it was like in the 1920s. We can read into it, but, who was Valentino like comparable to today in today's age? Like, would this be like big news, like say DiCaprio passed away, or like who do you think that he kind of compares to?
I don't know. Is he like a Josh Hartnett? I mean, that would still suck if it's like, oh, Josh Hartnett died. Damn, like that sucks too.
It would all
suck.
So yeah, it would all guess. Is the Italian version of Colin Farrell? Is the Italian Antonio Banderas? I don't.
Maybe Antonio Banderas, which would be awful. I get okay. There. Now I'm in the mind of the Countess, and I'm crying. Okay. All right, I'm there.
100%. Listen, okay. If any of these things happen, obviously it'd be tragic as hell. I guess you got to think of, there's not as many, obviously as many films. It's all silent films. There's not as much production going on
huge.
Back then.
Yeah.
So if any star passes away, it's huge. It's breaking news. It's on newspapers everywhere. You know, they don't have Twitter. It's not popping up on Twitter back then, but it's big enough that it kind of it's an earthquake. It's a tremor felt throughout the industry and probably across the nation. Now, just like in the show, Valentino actually did pass away in a similar manner. It was during the promotion of The Son of the Sheik, and he was going from city to city across the U.S., and on August 15th, he collapsed in his New York City hotel room and was rushed to the hospital. Doctors discovered that he had a perforated ulcer, which required emergency surgery. He survived the surgery, but he would pass away a week later. So very tragic news. While he was basically just getting, promotion for the film itself, going from such a high point of his career, and then just tragically ending.
Now, also based on some truth is the Lady in Black aspect they had with the Countess. Now, it's based on the real story of a woman who would visit the grave of Valentino once a month and place a single red rose on his tomb. Now, this woman was never identified. So there you go. It's the Countess. Boo.
So we actually get this scene when the Countess is, going to pay her respects at the tomb. Some other women are kind of talking about the rumors swirling about the Lady in Black. And then, lo and behold, Valentino actually pops up. He's alive. He's not dead. Natacha's there as well. Now, some shocking news that we discover is that Valentino's body is not the one in the tomb. It is actually his poor stuntman, George Fisk, who was his real-life stuntman in that movie. He took the fall for him, literally. That's what happened here. Not in real life, though, of course. Not in real life. This didn't happen in real life. But the funniest line of this episode, let alone maybe even the season, occurs right after this.
To be clear, I did do most of my own stunts.
Just not this one.
Oh, he's the Tom Cruise of his time. Don't worry about that. And here we get the backstory of Elizabeth and her time with James March as they would fall in love, as she called it. She says they're not falling in love whatsoever. She's only in it pretty much for the money and a few other things, as we would find out later in the episode, is that she actually enjoys March's killings. She likes to hear the sound of it, and for whatever reason, it draws them closer together.
This was a little bit of a shock to me. I'm sure it was to you, because from what we saw from Elizabeth earlier in the flashbacks, she didn't seem like someone that would just be cool with, a murderer, a serial killer in the hotel.
It doesn't make any sense.
She almost committed suicide. March saved her from jumping out the window. They got married. She never really fell in love, but then to go to the 0 to 100 and kind of be totally down with this new husband of hers and killing a bunch of people. A little bit completely out of character for Elizabeth that we meet, in the early 20s. So it's kind of a shock, but it was like she's just trying to prove that to Valentino and Natacha that like she had no other choice to go to. She missed them both. She thought they were both gone, and she had kind of nowhere else to go, and she just wanted to kind of use someone for the money and the power and the status.
I don't suffer. Not anymore.
Your tears tell me otherwise.
I feel nothing.
And now it's time for Valentino to give his backstory as we learn that he met up with F.W. Murnau, the famous director of Nosferatu and many other films of the time period. Now, the Murnau in this story in AHS canon, apparently he's a vampire. All right.
Just a minor detail.
Just a little difference. So yeah. All right. Cool. So he turns Valentino, and I like the setup and how they accomplish this feat of just playing it off like an old time, silent picture.
Yeah.
I love it, especially the part where he just catches Morneau in the act and he doesn't know what's real and just the camera just flickers in and out. Or you could just, he's there and then there's just the body and then the body's gone. It's cool.
Yeah.
Now, Valentino takes this new gift and he apparently, the first thing he does is gives it to Natasha. And then from Natasha, they've met up with now the Countess, where they're asking her, does she want to join as well? And of course, the Countess says, yes, please. I want to be a vampire.
Yeah. I'm forever.
And unfortunately for her, sadly, March is listening in on the entire conversation, and he looks upset. He looks kind of bummed out and sad for a second there, so you know something bad's about to happen.
Now, within that whole backstory on how Morneau became a vampire, according to him, he was filming Nosferatu and kind of was looking for real-life vampires, and then that's how he was turned. It's kind of similar premise to Shadow of the Vampire. It came out in 2000 with John Malkovich and William Dafoe. A fun little twist on, obviously what was going down back then. But I like how they incorporated that into American Horror Story and into the kind of the what happened, the real life connections with people. So it's a fun little gift that he wanted to give to Valentino to kind of make sure that he could live for eternity, that he was such a star, that he was so infatuated with him, and he didn't want to kill him, and he wanted him to kind of live forever and give him this gift. And then Valentino, of course, wants to give it to everyone that, he's been in love with throughout his life.
Now we head back over to John Lowe at this is a terrible treatment center or psych ward, wherever the hell he is right now, because he's just walking through the halls. He's overhearing the guards talking about the monsters they have here. So sure enough, we figure out John's plan here, why he's even there in the first place, is to talk to someone who's attached to the crimes, to the 10 Commandment killings. Now, how does he do this? He knocks out the guard pretty easily. Only one there, no cameras apparently.
All security guards, Greg, they're easy to knock out, to get past. Like, this is like we've seen this numerous times in films and TV.
Yes, of course. Now he gets in the room and we find out, it's just a little girl. But obviously this isn't just any little girl. This is someone who's been turned. And she fills John in with everything that's transpired, or at least a little bit. She hasn't given him the name of the killer or anything, but she tells him that she was there. She was a part of most of these killings.
That's right. And then we get a flashback to her backstory, a little like insight into how she got there and what happened. And back in the 80s, her dad had her like in the car outside the Hotel Cortez. Horrible dad. They allude to kind of abuse, maybe sexual abuse, but definitely some sort of abuse was going on. And he goes in for a drink into the Hotel Cortez. I like to think that he's just chilling there with all the different ghosts. Maybe he's stuck in there still.
Possibly.
We didn't see him die, did we?
No, we just saw the Countess break the glass, and we get a quick, we have a new look from the Countess, 80s look Countess for a quick scene.
That was awesome to kind of, when you check in with all these characters at different, time periods, you get to see how the fashion changes. So you see the Countess in her 80s getup, and she basically saves the little girl, Ren, from the, the hot car, and then we can only assume, we don't see it actually happen, but she turns her, becoming one of her own children. And clearly the Countess maybe had been doing this prior with other kids that she saw needed help, but then had continued to do this through the 90s and 2000s, as we see later on, earlier on in this season.
Now, back to present day at the hotel. Valentino and Natasha are done, I guess, munching up on Marcy. That sounds like a cereal, by the way. Marcy's, whatever. At the end of the day, they're done with her. You can see they're starting to transform back. They're getting younger again. And they want their revenge on March for putting them in this scenario in the first place.
Yeah, so clearly we know that after we saw March kind of eavesdropping on their conversation with Elizabeth, that March did something horrible to them and kind of locked them away, right?
Yep.
And he was obviously threatened by them and the love that they had, that kind of the real bond that those three had. Whereas March and Elizabeth didn't really have anything. It was kind of just like, okay, I guess we'll be together. So James March, a conniving, maniacal man that could literally we see as he's explaining to Elizabeth at their monthly dinners. I like how they have just monthly dinners together, but we see
just once a
that.
month.
It's like an arrangement that they made, right? She just like, no, you only get to see me once a month. But he reveals exactly what he did, and she is in utter shock. He actually was able to not only like beat up a couple of vampires, corral them, kidnap them, bring them into his hotel, and then construct basically a prison around them with steel and bricks. Who knew that he was so resourceful? But I guess it shouldn't be too shocking for us after what we've seen from James March.
The only question I have here is how did they stay alive so long without anything down there? They didn't eat each other. Now, obviously, they deteriorated over time. It seems like they just had a long sleep. Maybe they just, laid down for a very, very, very long time, and then construction work woke them up, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they allude to that they did feast on like pests, like rats and rodents and stuff. Like you can imagine that place is probably crawling with some disgusting things in those walls.
Yeah.
But even so, Greg, I mean, if you're a vampire and you're there for 50, 60 years, more, right? It's like almost like 100 years. If you're in there for that long, and not eating anything. You'd be a lot more weak than what they were at that point. They would be like skin and bones. But regardless, there's not any necessary science behind American Horror Story. So, they want revenge. They know who did this to them. They know, why it was done, and they want to get back at James March.
How long have you been trapped in this place?
Too long. I am going to rip that man's head off.
Now, Elizabeth tells March that she also wants to marry Will Drake. So good luck with that, Will. We'll see you in the next episode. And maybe it might be your last at this point, because now March, he's not too thrilled about this.
Yeah, as soon as James March knows any of this, like he's probably gonna like clip Drake in the next episode. I mean, he's okay with it seems like he's okay with the arrangement that him and Elizabeth have, but he still always wants to have the upper hand and in control of everything.
Now, Valentino and Natasha, they're saved. They get their life force back from, I guess, some strippers, some Aussies strippers in the room next door. So they
Magic Mike Down Under, Greg.
Cool. All right. Well, whatever the case, it works out for them. And the last thing we see is they head out of the hotel. So let's see where this goes from there. And from there, we cut back to John Lowe one last time as he's talking to the little girl. They're coming up with a plan of what to do next. But of course, as you do in any kind of storyline, we had it. And I used to call it they had the magical Negro character, or the little girl who tells you everything you need to know. And then they fade out. They're like, okay, I've done my job, bye, and then they die. Well, this is what happens here too, is the little girl walks in the street and you're like, okay, I know what's going to happen here, where she's about to get mean girled and she gets sidelined by a bus, she's gone, and end scene. End the episode. That's it.
Yeah, ends on quite a cliffhanger, but you're right. The sequence with Ren and John Lowe is extremely weird, because she's kind of like leading him on a little bit here and there and giving him like, okay, you want to know? Oh, you want to know? Okay, I'm gonna tell you. And then like she doesn't. The conversation is just it's so abnormal of how you would kind of interrogate someone who was at the crime scene. It made me feel like she wanted to tell him something that might like blow his mind, and it kind of feels like John is maybe deciding not to know certain things. Like maybe he's kind of being selective with his memory, and maybe he knows a whole lot more, or maybe he was at the crime scene, wink wink, a whole lot more than he leads on to believe.
Spoilers.
No spoilers, Greg. No spoilers, Greg. But like it's just like a weird way, I don't know if you felt the same way, to have a conversation with someone about that. It was kind of very revealing, having now that you and I know what happens in the next episode. It's a weird way to kind of give half of the secret away already.
It's the writer's room. They're like, we're stepping on hot lava here. We gotta like watch ourselves a little bit, not to reveal too much just yet. But at this point, you can start to put things together of what's going on here before it's finally all revealed in the next episode.
So that will do it for this breakdown. We, of course, will be back next week with episode 8. Let us know what you thought of this episode in the comments below, guys, and we hope y'all are taking care.
Be safe. Bye-bye.
Bye.